The dust had barely settled from the wagon wheels when Jessica Morgan realized her family was not coming back for her. She stood at the crossroads 3 miles outside Socorro, New Mexico, her carpetbag clutched in trembling hands, watching the caravan disappear into the September heat of 1878. The sun beat down mercilessly on her bonnet, and sweat trickled down her spine beneath her gray traveling dress. Her stepfather had convinced her mother to leave her behind, claiming there was not enough room in the wagon for someone who brought nothing but trouble. The truth was simpler and crueler. At 19 years old, Jessica was a reminder of her mother's first marriage, an inconvenience to a new family that did not want her. The crossroads stretched in 4 directions across the scrubland. North led back to the misery she had left in Kansas. South wound toward Mexico and the unknown. East would take her deeper into territory she knew nothing about. West pointed towards Socorro, a town she had heard mentioned only in passing during the journey. Her legs shook as the reality settled over her like a heavy blanket. She had $3.40 in her reticule, the clothes on her back, 1 spare dress in her bag, and absolutely nowhere to go. Jessica sank onto her carpetbag and tried not to cry. She had promised herself when they left Kansas that she would never shed another tear over people who did not want her. But sitting alone at a dusty crossroads in New Mexico territory, that promise felt impossible to keep. The landscape around her was nothing like the green fields she had known. Here, the earth stretched brown and tan beneath an impossibly blue sky, dotted with scrub brush and distant mesas that shimmered in the heat. The sound of hoofbeats made her jerk her head up. A rider approached from the west, moving at an easy pace on a bay horse. Jessica scrambled to her feet, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was. Her heart hammered as the rider drew closer, and she could make out more details. He was tall in the saddle, wearing a dusty black hat and a dark vest over a blue shirt. A gun belt hung at his hip, and saddlebags were secured behind him. The man slowed his horse as he approached, his eyes taking in the scene with quick intelligence. Jessica lifted her chin, trying to appear less desperate than she felt. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a startling gray blue, sharp and assessing, but not unkind. "Afternoon, miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was deep and carried the slow drawl of someone who had spent time in Texas. "You look like you might be in a spot of trouble." Jessica's pride wanted to deny it, but her practical side knew that was foolish. "My family continued on without me," she said, keeping her voice as steady as she could manage. "I find myself in need of reaching Socorro." The cowboy's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. He glanced down the road where her family's wagon tracks were still visible in the dirt, then back at her. "They left you here? On purpose?" "That appears to be the situation." He was quiet for a moment, and Jessica felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She could only imagine what he must think of her, standing alone at a crossroads, abandoned by her own family. He swung down from his horse with an easy grace, landing light on his feet despite his height. Up close, she could see he was older than she had first thought, perhaps 26 or 27, with sun creases at the corners of his eyes and a scar along his jaw. "Name is Vincent Hawthorne," he said. "I work at the Double R Ranch, about 5 miles west of Socorro. Been up north delivering some horses." "Jessica Morgan," she replied, extending her hand before she remembered that might not be proper. He shook it anyway, his grip firm and calloused. "Well, Miss Morgan, I cannot in good conscience leave you standing at a crossroads alone. Socorro is 3 miles that way," he nodded west, "and the sun will be setting in a few hours. You are welcome to ride double with me into town, or I can walk alongside if you would be more comfortable." The offer was so unexpected and delivered with such straightforward kindness that Jessica felt her throat tighten. "I do not have money to pay you for your trouble." "Did I ask for any?" Vincent's mouth quirked slightly. "Sometimes people just help because it is the right thing to do." Jessica studied him, trying to assess whether this was genuine kindness or something more dangerous. But his eyes were steady and honest, and she was out of options. "I would be grateful for the ride, Mr. Hawthorne." He picked up her carpetbag as if it weighed nothing and secured it behind his saddle. Then he swung back up onto his horse and extended his hand down to her. "Put your foot on mine, and I will pull you up." Jessica had never ridden a horse in her life, let alone sat behind a man on one, but she did as he instructed. His hand was strong as he hauled her up, and she found herself seated sideways behind the saddle, one arm clutching her bag and the other holding tentatively to his vest. The horse shifted beneath them, and she gasped. "Easy," Vincent said, though she was not sure if he was speaking to her or the horse. "Chester here is gentle as a kitten. Just hold on and try to relax." Relax was not something Jessica felt capable of doing, but she held on as Vincent urged the horse forward at a walk. The rhythm of the horse's gait was strange and unsettling, and she found herself gripping Vincent's vest tighter than was probably proper. If he minded, he did not say anything. "So, your family just left you," he said after a few minutes of silence. It was not quite a question, but Jessica felt compelled to answer. "My stepfather convinced my mother it was best. I am from her first marriage, and I suppose I was a reminder of things he would rather forget." "That is a sorry excuse for treating another human being poorly," Vincent said bluntly. "Especially family. They made their choice." "Appears so." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "You got any plans for Socorro? People there expecting you?" Jessica's stomach dropped. In her shock at being abandoned, she had not thought that far ahead. "No, I have never been there before. You got any particular skills? Trade? I can read and write. I am good with numbers. I can sew and cook and keep house." She paused. "I was helping at a general store back in Kansas, working the counter and managing inventory." Vincent nodded slowly. "Mrs. Chen, who runs the mercantile in Socorro, is getting on in years. She has been complaining about needing help. Might be worth talking to her. You think she would hire me? She does not know me. I know her, and I will vouch for you if you need it." "Why?" The question burst out before Jessica could stop it. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Vincent glanced back at her, and there was something in his expression she could not quite read. "My mother died when I was 12. My father remarried within 6 months to a woman who made it clear she did not want another woman's child around. I left home at 14 and never looked back. I know what it is like to be unwanted by the people who are supposed to care for you." The raw honesty in his words made Jessica's chest ache. "I am sorry. Ancient history now, but it taught me to help people when I can, because sometimes one person giving a damn makes all the difference." He turned back to face forward. "So, I will help you get settled in Socorro. After that, your path is your own to walk." They rode in silence for a while, and Jessica found herself relaxing slightly against Vincent's back. The sun was lowering in the sky, painting the landscape in shades of gold and orange. In the distance, she could see Socorro taking shape, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures clustered together where the land flattened out. "What is Socorro like?" she asked. "About 500 people, mostly Mexican families who have been here for generations, plus some Anglo settlers and miners. There is silver in the mountains, which brings in prospectors and all the trouble that comes with them. But it is a decent town overall. The marshal keeps things mostly peaceful." He paused. "There is a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She is particular about who she rents to, but if Mrs. Chen hires you, that might be enough to convince her to give you a room. And if Mrs. Chen does not hire me, then we will figure something else out." The certainty in his voice steadied something inside Jessica. For the first time since being left at the Crossroads, she felt like perhaps everything would not completely fall apart. They entered Socorro as the sun touched the horizon, painting the adobe buildings pink and gold. People were out on the streets, and more than a few turned to watch as Vincent rode through with Jessica behind him. "Let them look," Vincent said quietly, sensing her discomfort. "Small-town people always gossip. Give them a few days and they will find something else to talk about." He rode straight to a building with a painted sign reading Chen's Mercantile in both English and Chinese characters. A smaller sign in the window advertised dry goods, hardware, and sundries. Vincent dismounted and helped Jessica down, his hands steady on her waist. Her legs wobbled when her feet hit the ground, stiff from the ride. "Give yourself a minute," he said. "First time on a horse takes some getting used to." Jessica stood still, grateful for the advice as blood flowed back into her legs. Vincent retrieved her carpet bag and gestured toward the mercantile door. "Come on, let us see if Mrs. Chen is in a hiring mood." The interior of the mercantile was dim after the bright sunlight outside, but Jessica's eyes adjusted quickly. The store was well organized, with shelves of goods lining the walls and a long counter running along one side. the smell of leather and coffee and soap mixed together in a way that was oddly comforting. Behind the counter stood a small Chinese woman who looked to be in her 60s, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked up as they entered, and her face creased in a smile. "Vincent Hawthorne, you have been gone almost 2 weeks. I was beginning to think you got lost." "Takes longer than 2 weeks to lose me, Mrs. Chen. Delivered all 15 horses to that ranch outside Albuquerque and got a good price for the boss." He stepped aside so Jessica was more visible. "This is Miss Jessica Morgan. I found her stranded at the Crossroads outside town. Her family left her behind, and she is looking for work." Mrs. Chen's smile faded, replaced by sharp assessment. She studied Jessica from head to toe, missing nothing. "Left behind? That is a harsh thing." "Yes, madam," Jessica said, lifting her chin. "But I am a hard worker, and I need employment. I have experience working in a general store, managing inventory, and working with customers. I can read, write, and cipher. I am quick to learn, and I do not mind long hours." "You ever steal?" "No, madam." "You drink?" "No, madam." "You cause trouble with men?" Jessica felt her face heat. "No, madam. I keep to myself and do my work." Mrs. Chen drummed her fingers on the counter, then looked at Vincent. "You vouch for her character?" "I do. She seems honest and capable, and she needs a break. You have been saying for months you need help." Saying and doing are two different things. But Mrs. Chen's expression had softened slightly. She turned back to Jessica. "I will give you 1 week trial, room and board plus 50 cents a day. If you work out, we will discuss permanent arrangements. You start tomorrow morning at 6. Relief flooded through Jessica so powerfully she felt dizzy. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I promise you will not regret this." "We will see. For tonight you can sleep in the back room. Tomorrow we will see about getting you set up at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house." She looked at Vincent. "You did a good thing, bringing her here." Vincent tipped his hat. "Just trying to help." Mrs. Chen disappeared into the back and returned with a key. The back room has a cot and a wash basin. It is not fancy, but it is clean and private. "Come, I will show you." Jessica followed her through a door behind the counter into a small room that was indeed simple but clean. A narrow cot stood against one wall, covered with a faded quilt. A small table held a wash basin and pitcher, and there was a hook on the wall for hanging clothes. After the Crossroads, it looked like luxury. "Thank you," Jessica said quietly. "This is perfect." Mrs. Chen's expression softened further. "Life is hard, especially for women alone. We must help each other when we can." She patted Jessica's arm. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." When they returned to the main room, Vincent was waiting by the door. Mrs. Chen went behind the counter to begin closing up for the evening, leaving them with a moment of privacy. "Thank you," Jessica said, the words feeling inadequate for what he had done. "You changed everything for me today." Vincent's gray-blue eyes were warm in the lamplight. "You would have figured something out. You seem like the resourceful type." "Maybe. But you made it possible." She hesitated, then added, "Will I see you again?" "Socorro is not that big of a town. I come in for supplies regular enough." He settled his hat more firmly on his head. "You take care of yourself, Miss Morgan. And if you need anything, the Double R is 5 miles west on the main road. Anyone can point you in the right direction." He turned to leave, and Jessica felt an unexpected pang at watching him go. He had been in her life for less than 2 hours, but he had shown her more kindness than her own family. "Mr. Hawthorne?" He paused at the door, looking back. "You were right. Sometimes one person giving a damn makes all the difference." A smile crossed his face, transforming it from merely handsome to something that made Jessica's heart skip. "Good luck, Miss Morgan. Something tells me you are going to do just fine." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Jessica stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of his horse's hoofbeats fade into the evening. Mrs. Chen came around the counter with a basket of food. "For your supper. Tomorrow you eat with me in the morning before we open." She studied Jessica's face. "Vincent Hawthorne is a good man, one of the best I know. But he is also a ranch hand who works hard for little pay and has no family to speak of. Do not get ideas." Jessica felt her cheeks warm. "I am just grateful for his help, Mrs. Chen." "Of course." But the older woman's eyes were knowing. "Come, Let me show you where the privy is, and then you should rest. 6 in the morning comes early. That night, lying on the narrow cot in the back room of the mercantile, Jessica stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning, she had been with her family, still part of something even if she was not wanted. Now she was alone in a strange town, with only the kindness of strangers keeping her from complete destitution. It should have been terrifying, and it was. But it was also strangely liberating. For the first time in her life, her path was entirely her own to choose. She thought of Vincent Hawthorne, the way he had spoken about being unwanted by his father's new wife, the matter-of-fact kindness he had shown her. Something about him had made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in years. Mrs. Chen's warning echoed in her mind, but Jessica pushed it aside. She was not getting ideas. She was just grateful. But as she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of gray-blue eyes and a smile that had made her heart skip. The next morning came too early, with Mrs. Chen knocking on the door at 5:30. Jessica dressed quickly in her spare dress, a simple brown calico that was slightly less dusty than the gray one she had worn yesterday. Mrs. Chen had breakfast waiting, a simple meal of eggs and tortillas that was the best thing Jessica had tasted in days. "You know how to work a counter?" Mrs. Chen asked as they ate. "Yes, madam. I worked at Henderson's General Store in Millbrook, Kansas for almost a year." "Good. Most of my customers speak Spanish, but enough speak English that you will stay busy. Prices are marked, but I will teach you the inventory system. Saturday is busiest, with ranchers and miners coming in from the surrounding areas." They spent the morning with Mrs. Chen, showing Jessica where everything was kept and how she organized her stock. The system was logical and well thought out, and Jessica found herself genuinely impressed by how efficiently the older woman ran her business. By noon, Mrs. Chen declared her competent enough to mind the counter while she worked on inventory in the back. Jessica's first solo customer was a Mexican woman about her mother's age, looking for fabric. Jessica helped her find what she needed, and though the woman spoke limited English and Jessica spoke no Spanish, they managed to communicate through gestures and smiles. The woman left with her purchase looking satisfied, and Jessica felt a small glow of accomplishment. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers, and Jessica kept busy measuring out flour and sugar, selling ammunition and tobacco, and wrapping purchases in brown paper. She was just helping a miner find bootlaces when the door opened and Vincent walked in. Her heart did an unexpected little jump at the sight of him. He had cleaned up since yesterday, his dark hair slightly damp, as if he had recently washed. He wore a clean shirt and his hat in his hand, looking around the store until his eyes found her. His face lit up with a smile. "Miss Morgan, I see you survived your first day." "Mr. Hawthorne?" Jessica finished with the miner and moved to where Vincent stood by the counter. "What brings you to town?" "Boss sent me for supplies." He pulled a list from his pocket and handed it over. "Also wanted to see how you were settling in." Jessica scanned the list, noting the items. "I can get these together for you. It will take a few minutes." "I have got time." She began gathering the supplies, aware of Vincent watching her as she worked. It should have made her nervous, but instead it felt oddly comfortable. Mrs. Chen has been very kind, and she is a good teacher. She is particular about who she works with. The fact that she kept you past the first morning is a good sign. He leaned against the counter, relaxed. "You find a place to stay yet?" "Mrs. Chen said we would look into the boarding house situation tomorrow. For now, I am in the back room here." "That works short term, but you will want your own place eventually. Give you some separation from work." Jessica set a bag of coffee beans on the counter. "Right now, I am just grateful to have work and a safe place to sleep. Everything else is a luxury." Vincent's expression turned serious. "You set the bar too low for how you deserve to be treated, Miss Morgan." The comment caught her off guard. She paused in measuring out sugar, looking at him. "Excuse me?" "Just an observation. You seem grateful for basic human decency, like it is some rare gift. Makes me think you have not received much of it in your life." Jessica felt exposed, like he was seeing right through to her core. "Perhaps I just appreciate kindness when it is shown. Perhaps, or perhaps you have been treated poorly enough that kindness seems exceptional." His gray-blue eyes held hers. "I am just saying you should expect better from the people around you. You deserve it." No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Jessica felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. She turned back to gathering his supplies, needing a moment to compose herself. "I will remember that." They were quiet while she finished pulling together his order, calculating the total in her head. When she told him the amount, he counted out the money and added an extra $1. "That is too much," Jessica said, trying to hand it back. "Keep it. Consider it a thank you for excellent service." "I cannot take your money as a tip. Mrs. Chen would not approve." "Then do not tell her." Vincent's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Use it to buy yourself something nice. When was the last time you had something just for you?" Jessica could not remember. Every penny she had ever earned had gone toward necessities or been claimed by her family. The idea of buying something frivolous felt foreign and slightly scandalous. But Vincent was looking at her with such genuine kindness that she found herself folding the $1 and slipping it into her pocket. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You are welcome." He gathered up his supplies. "I will be back in a few days. If you need anything before then, remember what I said about the double R." After he left, Jessica found herself standing at the counter with a silly smile on her face. "Mrs. Chen emerged from the back room and gave her a knowing look. "I thought you said you were not getting ideas." Jessica felt her cheeks heat. "I am not. He just came in for supplies." Vincent Hawthorne has been buying supplies from me for 3 years. He has never come in on a Wednesday before." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "But like I said, he is a good man. If you're going to get ideas, he is not a bad choice." Over the next 2 weeks, Jessica settled into a rhythm in Socorro. Mrs. Chen moved her into Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, where Jessica had a small but clean room with a window overlooking the street. The work at the mercantile was steady and satisfying, and Jessica discovered she had a knack for remembering customer preferences and managing inventory. Mrs. Chen seemed pleased with her, and their working relationship developed into something warmer, almost familial. Vincent came into town twice more, always with a supply list from the ranch, but also always finding time to talk with Jessica. He told her about life on the Double R, about the horses he trained and the vast stretches of land he rode. She told him about the customers she met, about learning Spanish from Mrs. Chen and the other shopkeepers, about slowly building a life in Socorro. Their conversations felt easy and natural, like they had known each other far longer than a few weeks. On a Saturday morning in October, the mercantile was packed with weekend customers when trouble walked through the door. 3 men entered, already drunk despite the early hour, loud and aggressive. Jessica was helping an elderly Mexican man when one of the drunks bumped into him hard enough to knock him into the counter. "Watch where you're going, old man," the drunk snarled in English. The elderly man said something in Spanish, clearly apologizing, but the drunk grabbed his shirt. "Speak English or get out of our town." Jessica's hands clenched. She had seen men like this before, full of liquor and meanness. But this was her store now, her responsibility. She stepped forward, placing herself between the drunk and the elderly customer. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to leave." The drunk focused on her, his eyes bleary and mean. "What did you say?" "This man was here first, and you assaulted him. Please leave the store." One of the other drunks laughed. "Listen to her, giving orders like she owns the place." "Please," Jessica said, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Just go, and there will not be any trouble." The first drunk released the elderly man and turned his full attention to Jessica, leaning in close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Maybe I want trouble. Maybe I think a pretty girl like you needs to learn some manners." Jessica held her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to back away. "And maybe you need to learn that respectable businesses do not serve drunks who assault other customers." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, squeezing hard enough to hurt. "You got a mouth on you. Let her go." The voice came from the doorway, low and dangerous. Jessica looked past the drunk to see Vincent standing there, and something in his expression made her blood run cold. This was not the kind man who had helped her at the Crossroads. This was someone harder, someone who had clearly handled violence before. The drunk turned, still gripping Jessica's wrist. "This is not your business, cowboy. It is when you put your hands on a lady." Vincent moved into the store, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "Let her go and walk out. Simple as that." The tension in the store was thick enough to choke on. The other customers had backed away, creating a clear space. Mrs. Chen had appeared from the back room, her face tight with worry. The drunk's friends shifted nervously, suddenly looking less sure of themselves. "I said, let her go." Vincent's voice dropped even lower. I will not ask again. The drunk released Jessica's wrist and took a step toward Vincent. You threatening me? I am giving you an opportunity to leave with your dignity. What happens next is up to you. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of the drunk's friends grabbed his arm. Come on, Luke. It is not worth it. Let us go to the saloon. Luke shook him off, but seemed to reconsider his options. He looked between Vincent and Jessica, then spat on the floor. This place is a dump anyway. The three men stumbled out, muttering curses. The moment they were gone, the tension broke. Customers started talking again, and Mrs. Chen hurried over to check on Jessica. But Jessica was looking at Vincent, who had relaxed his stance but was still watching the door. Thank you, she said, rubbing her wrist where the drunk had grabbed her. That could have gotten ugly. Vincent finally looked at her, and the hardness faded from his expression, replaced by concern. Did he hurt you? Just my pride. I should have handled that better. You handled it exactly right. You stayed calm and tried to defuse the situation. Not your fault he was too drunk to listen. Vincent moved closer, his eyes on her wrist. Let me see. Jessica extended her arm, and Vincent's calloused fingers were surprisingly gentle as he examined the reddened skin. It will bruise, but nothing serious. You should put something cold on it. Mrs. Chen bustled over with a wet cloth. Here, dear, press this against your wrist. She looked at Vincent. Thank you for being here. Those three have been causing trouble all over town this week. Has the marshal done anything? He ran them out of the saloon yesterday, but they keep coming back. Mrs. Chen shook her head. They are miners from the camp up in the hills, spending their money on whiskey and looking for fights. Vincent's jaw tightened. If they come back, send someone for me. You were not even supposed to be in town today, Jessica said. What brought you here? Boss sent me for more supplies. Seems like good timing. He looked around at the other customers, who were trying to pretend they were not listening. I should go, let you get back to work, but I will be in town for a few hours if you need anything. After Vincent left, the morning passed without further incident, but Jessica found her mind drifting to the way he had positioned himself between her and danger, the quiet authority in his voice. She had seen a different side of him today, one that suggested his past held more than just being unwanted by his stepmother. That evening, after the store closed, Jessica walked back to the boarding house to find Vincent sitting on the front porch, his hat in his hands. He stood when he saw her. Mr. Hawthorne, what are you doing here? Making sure you got home safe, and I wanted to check on your wrist. Jessica held up her arm, where a bruise was indeed forming. It is sore, but I will survive. You did not have to wait for me. I know. He fell into step beside her as she climbed the porch steps. But I wanted to. Is that all right? Jessica's heart did that little skip again. Yes, it is all right. They sat on the porch as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Other residents of the boarding house came and went, and Jessica was aware of the curious looks they received, but she found she did not care. Sitting here with Vincent felt right in a way she could not quite explain. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Anything? Today in the store, the way you handled those men, that was not the first time you have faced down trouble, was it? Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his gaze on the horizon. No, it was not. Will you tell me about it? He turned to look at her, his gray-blue eyes serious. Are you sure you want to know? I would not ask if I was not sure. Vincent leaned back against the porch post, his hat still in his hands. After I left home at 14, I drifted for a few years, took whatever work I could find, which was not much for a kid with no family and no references. Ended up in Texas, working for a rancher who was not particularly concerned with legalities. We moved cattle that did not always belong to us, if you understand my meaning. Jessica understood. He was confessing to rustling. What happened? Got caught when I was 17, spent a year in jail, which gave me a lot of time to think about the direction my life was heading. He met her eyes. When I got out, I swore I would go straight. Drifted north, found work on legitimate ranches, learned to train horses. Been at the Double R for 3 years now, and I have kept my nose clean. But I learned things during those wild years, including how to handle men like the ones in the store today. Jessica absorbed this information, turning it over in her mind. He had trusted her with something that could change her opinion of him, something that would make many people judge him harshly. Thank you for telling me. You are not going to ask me to leave you alone? Tell me you cannot associate with someone who has been in jail? Why would I do that? You made mistakes when you were young and desperate. You paid for them, and you changed. That takes courage. She reached out and touched his hand. Besides, you were 14 years old and alone. I cannot imagine what that was like. Vincent looked down at where her hand rested on his, and something shifted in his expression. You are not like anyone I have ever met, Jessica Morgan. Is that good or bad? It is very, very good. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. I know I do not have much to offer. I am a ranch hand with a criminal past and no family, but I find myself thinking about you constantly. I come into town on any excuse just to see you, and sitting here with you right now, I cannot remember ever feeling this content. Jessica's breath caught. Vincent, I am not asking you for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know. You deserve to know that someone sees you and values you and thinks you are remarkable. Emotion welled up in Jessica's chest, so powerful it almost hurt. I think about you too. Every time the door opens at the Mercantile, I hope it is you. And when you are there, everything seems brighter somehow. Vincent's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch sending shivers up her arm. I would like to court you properly, if you will have me. I know it is fast, and I know I'm not much of a catch, but I promise I will treat you the way you deserve to be treated. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Yes, I will. His smile was bright enough to rival the sunset. He raised her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, careful to avoid the bruised wrist. You will not regret this. I know I will not. The courtship that followed was sweet and careful, both of them aware that they were building something precious. Vincent came to town 3 or 4 times a week, far more than ranch business required, and everyone in Socorro quickly knew they were courting. He brought her small gifts, a hair ribbon from a traveling merchant, wild flowers picked from the range, a book of poetry he had traded labor for. They took walks in the evening after the Mercantile closed, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams of having his own ranch someday, breeding and training horses. She told him about wanting stability and family, about building a life that felt like home. Mrs. Chen watched their courtship with approval, though she warned Jessica to be careful. Love is wonderful, but it does not put food on the table or a roof over your head. Make sure you are building something solid. Jessica appreciated the advice, but she could not imagine her life without Vincent in it now. He had become as essential as breathing, the center around which her days revolved, and she could see in his eyes that he felt the same way. On a cool November evening, 2 months after they met, Vincent asked if she would take a ride with him. Jessica had become comfortable on horseback by now, and she sat behind him on Chester as they rode out of town toward the west. The sun was setting, painting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. Vincent guided the horse to a small rise that overlooked a valley, where a creek cut through the land and cottonwood trees clustered along its banks. "This is beautiful," Jessica said, as Vincent helped her down. "It is part of the Double R range. I come here sometimes when I need to think." He kept his hands on her waist, looking down at her. "Jessica, these past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. Every moment I spend with you makes me more certain that you are the person I want to spend my life with." Jessica's heart began to race. "Vincent, I know it is fast. I know I should probably wait longer, be more practical. But life has taught me that good things are rare and precious, and when you find them, you hold on tight." He took both her hands in his. "I love you, Jessica Morgan. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you face the world with your chin up, even when you are scared. I love how you treat everyone with respect, from Mrs. Chen to the poorest customer who walks into the Mercantile. I love the way you laugh, and the way you look at me like I am someone worth looking at." Tears were streaming down Jessica's face now. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me sometimes." "Then marry me. I do not have much, but I will work every day for the rest of my life to give you the home and family you deserve. I will never leave you behind or make you feel unwanted. I will choose your path and walk it with you wherever it leads." The echo of that day at the Crossroads was not lost on Jessica. She had been left behind then, alone and frightened. And Vincent had chosen to stop, to help, to see her. He had been choosing her every day since, and she had been choosing him right back. "Yes," she said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." Vincent pulled her close and kissed her for the first time, gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling like fools. "We should tell Mrs. Chen," Jessica said, "and Mrs. Patterson, and I suppose everyone else in town, since they will all know by tomorrow anyway. Let them talk. I am proud to have you as my wife." He kissed her again, less gentle this time, and Jessica felt heat curl through her body. "How do you feel about a short engagement? How short? A month? Is that too fast?" Jessica thought about propriety and what people might say, then decided she did not care. A month sounds perfect. They rode back to town as the stars were coming out, and Jessica felt like her heart might burst from happiness. After years of feeling unwanted and invisible, she was seen and loved by a good man who made her feel safe and cherished. It felt like a miracle. Mrs. Chen was delighted by the news, though she pretended to be stern. "You will keep working until you marry, yes? I cannot train someone new in a month." "Of course," Jessica promised. "And after you are married, will you keep working?" Jessica looked at Vincent, who shrugged. "That is up to you. I will not tell you what to do." "I would like to keep working, at least for a while," Jessica said. "If that is all right with you, Mrs. Chen." "Of course it is all right. You are the best help I have ever had." The older woman's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You have come far from that girl at the Crossroads." The month passed in a blur of preparation. Socorro did not have much in the way of wedding finery, but the women of the town rallied around Jessica, helping her sew a simple white dress and plan a small ceremony. Vincent's boss at the Double R, a weathered rancher named Robert Reeves, gave Vincent 3 days off for the wedding and a honeymoon, which was generous given the busy season. On a crisp December morning, Jessica stood in the small Catholic church in Socorro with Father Miguel ready to perform the ceremony. The church was full of people, most of whom Jessica had only known for 3 months, but who had become her community. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, beaming. Mrs. Patterson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The other shopkeepers and customers she had come to know filled the pews, all smiling. And at the altar stood Vincent, wearing a new shirt and looking nervous and handsome, and so full of love that Jessica's eyes immediately filled with tears. His friend from the ranch, a cowhand named Thomas, stood beside him as best man. Jessica walked down the aisle alone, with no family to give her away, but she did not feel alone. She felt supported by an entire town full of people who had welcomed her and helped her build a new life. When she reached Vincent, he took her hand and squeezed it gently. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "You look terrified," she whispered back, and he laughed. Father Miguel performed the ceremony in a mix of Spanish and English, and Jessica felt the weight and joy of the vows they spoke, to love and cherish, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, until death parted them. She meant every word with her whole heart. When Father Miguel pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her to the applause of everyone gathered, and Jessica felt like she was floating. They were married. She was Jessica Hawthorne now, and she belonged to someone who would never leave her behind. The celebration afterward was held in the courtyard behind the church, with food brought by various townspeople and music provided by a trio of musicians who played fiddle, guitar, and accordion. Jessica danced with Vincent, laughing as he confessed he was terrible at dancing, but was willing to try for her. They danced with other people too, and ate too much, and accepted congratulations from what felt like every person in Socorro. As the sun began to set, Vincent pulled Jessica aside. "Ready to go?" They had rented a small house on the edge of town, nothing fancy but theirs. Jessica nodded, suddenly nervous. They said their goodbyes and walked hand in hand through the streets of Socorro to their new home. Vincent carried her over the threshold, making her laugh, and set her down gently in the front room. The house had 2 rooms, a main living space with a small kitchen area and a bedroom in the back. It was sparsely furnished with items donated or loaned by neighbors, but it felt like a palace to Jessica. It was hers, theirs. "Are you happy?" Vincent asked, pulling her close. "I have never been happier in my entire life." He kissed her then, and the kiss deepened into something more urgent. They made their way to the bedroom, helping each other out of their wedding clothes with fumbling, eager hands. The night was tender and passionate, and sometimes awkward as they learned each other's bodies. But it was perfect because it was theirs. Afterward, lying in bed with Vincent's arm around her and her head on his chest, Jessica felt profound contentment settle over her. "Thank you for stopping at the Crossroads that day. Thank you for letting me help you." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Best decision I ever made?" "Mine too." The next morning, they woke early and rode out to the valley Vincent had shown her the night he proposed. They had packed a picnic, planning to spend the day together before Vincent had to return to work at the Double R. The December day was clear and cold, but wrapped in a blanket with Vincent beside her, Jessica felt warm. "I have been thinking," Vincent said as they ate, "about the future." "What about it?" "Mr. Reeves mentioned he might be looking to sell off some of the Double R land in the next few years. He is getting older and wants to retire back east with his daughter. If I can save enough money, I might be able to buy a section of land and start building my own ranch." He looked at her. "What would you think about that?" "I think it sounds wonderful. How much land?" "Maybe 100 acres to start, along the creek, enough for a small herd and room to breed horses." His voice filled with excitement as he talked about his dream. "We could build a house, start small, and add on as we go. It would be hard work, and we would not have much money for a few years. But it would be ours." Jessica could picture it clearly. A house growing room by room, horses in a corral, maybe chickens in a vegetable garden. Children playing in the yard, a life built together from nothing but hard work and love. How much money would we need? For the land and materials to start building, probably $500. It was a staggering amount. Jessica made $7 a week at the mercantile. Vincent made about $30 a month at the ranch. "It will take time, but we can do it. I will keep working and we will save every penny we can." Vincent pulled her close. "You are sure? It means going without for a while." "I have gone without before. This time, I will be going without towards something, with someone I love. That makes all the difference." They spent the rest of the day making plans, dreaming about the future. When they returned to town that evening, Jessica felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She was not just surviving anymore, she was building a life. The winter passed quickly. Jessica continued working at the mercantile, and her friendship with Mrs. Chen deepened into something like a mother-daughter relationship. Vincent worked long hours at the Double R, training horses and managing the cattle. They saw each other every evening, eating simple suppers in their small house and talking about their days. On Sundays, they went to church and then rode out to the valley to dream about their future ranch. By spring, they had saved $73. It was not much, but it felt like a fortune to Jessica. She kept it hidden in a jar under a loose floorboard, adding to it every week. Mrs. Chen had given her a raise to $8 a week, and Vincent was occasionally earning extra money training horses for other ranchers. In April, Jessica missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought it was just stress or a change in routine, but when she missed a second month and began feeling nauseated in the mornings, she knew she was pregnant. The realization filled her with equal parts joy and terror. They were barely making ends meet as it was. How would they afford a baby? But underneath the worry was a deep, fierce happiness. She was going to have Vincent's child. They were going to be a family. She told him that evening, nervous about his reaction. Vincent had just come in from a long day at the ranch, tired and dusty. Jessica had made dinner, but she could not eat, her stomach in knots. "Vincent, I need to tell you something." He looked up from his plate, immediately alert. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. At least, I hope you will not think it is wrong." She took a deep breath. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Vincent just stared at her. Then his face split into the widest smile she had ever seen. He stood up so fast his chair fell over and crossed the room in 2 strides to pull her into his arms. "A baby? We are going to have a baby?" "Yes." Jessica was crying now, relief flooding through her. "I know the timing is not ideal, and it will make saving harder, but I do not care about the timing. Jessica, we are going to have a baby." He was laughing and crying at the same time, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "This is the best news, the absolute best news." That night, they lay in bed with Vincent's hand on her still flat stomach, talking about names and whether it would be a boy or girl. The worry about money was still there, but it was overshadowed by joy. "We will figure it out," Vincent said. "We always do." And they did. Jessica worked at the mercantile through the summer until the heat and her growing belly made standing all day difficult. Mrs. Chen was understanding, letting her take breaks and sit when she needed to. Vincent took on every bit of extra work he could find, training horses on his days off and helping neighbors with various projects for extra money. In October, with Jessica's belly round and the baby kicking vigorously, Vincent came home with news. Mr. Reeves wants to talk to us. He said he has a proposition. They rode out to the Double R the next day, Jessica sitting carefully on Chester, while Vincent walked beside them. Robert Reeves met them on the porch of his ranch house, a solid adobe structure with a view of the mountains. He was a man in his 60s, weathered by decades of ranch work, but with kind eyes. "Vincent tells me you two are looking to buy land and start your own ranch," he said, after inviting them to sit. "Yes, sir," Vincent replied. "Eventually, we have been saving." "How much have you saved?" Vincent hesitated. "About $130 so far, sir." Reeves nodded slowly. "That is a good start. Shows you are serious and willing to work for what you want. I respect that." He pulled out a map and spread it on the table between them. "This is the Double R. I am planning to sell within the next 2 years and move back to Philadelphia to live with my daughter. I have had offers from big ranchers who want to buy the whole thing, but I would rather see it broken up and sold to folks who will work the land themselves." He pointed to a section on the map. "This is 120 acres along the creek, good grazing land and water access. I will sell it to you for $400, with $100 down and the rest paid over 2 years at 5% interest." Jessica and Vincent looked at each other, stunned. It was less than they had expected to pay, and the payment terms were generous. "Sir, that is incredibly kind," Vincent said, "but we only have 130 saved, and with the baby coming. I know about the baby. That is why I am making this offer now." Reeves looked at them both. "Vincent, you have been one of my best hands. You are honest, hard-working, and good with horses. Jessica, the whole town speaks well of you. You two are the kind of people who make a community strong. I would be proud to have you as neighbors, at least until I leave." "We accept," Jessica said before Vincent could overthink it. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves. You will not regret this." They put $100 down that day, leaving them with $30 to prepare for the baby. It should have been terrifying, but Jessica felt only excitement. They owned land. They had a path forward. Everything else would work out. Vincent spent every spare moment that fall and winter cutting timber and preparing to build a house on their land. Neighbors helped, the community coming together the way small towns do. By the time Jessica went into labor on a cold January night, the frame of a small house stood on their property, visible from the road. The labor was long and difficult, attended by the midwife and Mrs. Chen. Vincent paced outside, refused entry to the bedroom, slowly going out of his mind with worry. When the baby finally came just before dawn, the midwife emerged with a bundle in her arms and a smile on her face. "You have a son, Mr. Hawthorne, and your wife did beautifully." Vincent burst into the bedroom to find Jessica exhausted but glowing, propped up in bed with their baby in her arms. The infant had a shock of dark hair and was wailing lustily. "He has a good set of lungs," Jessica said, smiling. "Come meet your son." Vincent approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny red face. "He is perfect. You are perfect." He kissed Jessica's forehead. "Thank you for our son." "What should we name him?" Jessica asked. They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Vincent said, "What about James? James Vincent Hawthorne?" "James," Jessica repeated, testing it out. "I like that. Hello, James. Welcome to the world." The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful. Jessica cared for James while Vincent worked at the Double R and built their house in every spare moment. Mrs. Chen was generous, bringing food and baby clothes and offering advice. Mrs. Patterson taught Jessica how to manage the sleepless nights and endless feedings. The community that had welcomed Jessica when she arrived alone at the Crossroads now wrapped around her growing family, supporting them through the challenges of new parenthood. By spring, the house was livable, a simple 2-room structure, but solid and well-built. They moved in on a sunny April day, with James now 3 months old and starting to smile. Vincent carried Jessica over the threshold again, making her laugh. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hawthorne." Jessica looked around at the bare walls and simple furniture, at the cradle Vincent had built with his own hands, at the window that looked out over their land. "It is perfect." That summer, Vincent started building their horse operation, buying 3 mares with money loaned by Mr. Reeves. Jessica continued working part-time at the mercantile, bringing James with her when she could. Life was hard, but it was theirs. built with their own hands and filled with love. On a warm evening in September, 2 years after the day they met, Vincent and Jessica sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset paint the sky. James played at their feet with a wooden horse Vincent had carved. In the corral, 4 horses grazed, including a colt born just last month. "Do you remember the day we met?" Jessica asked. "Every detail. You were standing at that crossroads, looking lost and scared, but trying so hard to be brave. I thought my life was over. I had nowhere to go and no one who wanted me." Vincent took her hand. "And now?" Jessica looked at their son, at the house they had built, at the land stretching out before them. She thought about the community they were part of, the friends they had made, the life they were creating together. "Now I have everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible." "Same here." Vincent pulled her close. "You know what I think about sometimes? How close I came to not stopping that day. I was tired, and Socorro was still 3 miles away, and I almost just rode past. But something made me stop and ask if you needed help." "Fate," Jessica said. "Or divine intervention, or just dumb luck. Whatever it was, I am grateful for it every single day." He kissed her temple. "I love you, Jessica Hawthorne. I love you too." The years continued to unfold with the steady rhythm of ranch life. Vincent's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and ranchers from across the territory began seeking him out. Jessica worked at the mercantile until James was 3, then focused on the ranch and their growing family. A daughter, Rose, joined them when James was 4. Another son, Samuel, arrived 2 years after that. The house grew too, Vincent adding rooms as they needed them and as money allowed. The horse operation expanded, and they began running a small herd of cattle as well. The land that had been empty when they bought it slowly filled with life. A barn, a chicken coop, a garden that Jessica tended with the children's help, fences marking their boundaries. Mrs. Chen eventually retired and sold the mercantile to a young couple from Kansas, but she remained close to Jessica, a beloved grandmother figure to the children. Robert Reeves moved back to Philadelphia as planned, selling the rest of the Double R to 3 different families, all of whom became good friends and neighbors. Socorro grew, the population swelling past 1,000 as the silver mines brought more people west. Through it all, Vincent and Jessica worked side by side, building their dream one day at a time. They had disagreements and struggles, sleepless nights and financial worries, the ordinary challenges of any marriage and any ranch. But underneath it all was the solid foundation of love and mutual respect they had built from the very beginning. On a September evening, 15 years after they met, Jessica stood on the porch of their house, watching Vincent work with a young horse in the corral. At 34, he was still lean and strong, though his dark hair was starting to show hints of silver at the temples. James, now 14, worked alongside his father, learning the horse training trade. Rose, 10, was helping Jessica prepare dinner. Samuel, 8, was supposed to be collecting eggs but was playing with the dogs instead. Vincent looked up and caught Jessica watching. Even from a distance she could see his smile, the one reserved just for her. He said something to James, who nodded and took over with the horse, then walked toward the house. His stride was still that same easy gait she remembered from the day they met, though now it carried the confidence of a man who had built something lasting. "What are you thinking about?" he asked as he climbed the porch steps. "That day at the crossroads, how terrified I was, how certain I was that my life was over." Vincent put his arms around her waist, and she leaned back against him. "Your life was just beginning. We both were. I was so angry at my family for leaving me behind, but now I'm grateful. If they had not, I never would have met you. I prefer to think we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be." Jessica turned in his arms to face him. His gray-blue eyes still made her heart skip, even after 15 years. "Do you ever regret it, stopping that day? Taking on someone else's abandoned daughter?" "Never, not for a single second." He cupped her face in his hands. "Jessica, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children and this life we built together. I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. Even knowing how hard it would be, especially knowing how hard it would be. The hard things are what make it worth it." He kissed her softly. "I chose your path that day at the crossroads, and I have been choosing it every day since. Best decision I ever made." Tears pricked Jessica's eyes. "I love you so much." "I love you too." Always. Rose called from the kitchen that dinner was ready, and Samuel came running up with a basket of eggs, the dogs barking at his heels. James and Vincent washed up at the pump, talking about the horse they had been training. The family gathered around the table Jessica's father-in-law had built before he died. In the house Vincent had built with his own hands, on the land they had bought together with saved pennies and borrowed money. As they said grace and began passing dishes around the table, Jessica felt profound gratitude wash over her. Her life had not turned out anything like she had imagined when she was that frightened girl standing at a crossroads. It had turned out so much better. After dinner, when the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Vincent and Jessica walked out to the valley where he had proposed all those years ago. It had become a tradition, this walk on the anniversary of the day they met. The September night was cool and clear, stars spread across the sky like diamonds on velvet. 15 years, Jessica said. It has gone so fast, and we have a lifetime more ahead of us. Vincent pulled her close. What do you want for the next 15 years? Jessica thought about it. More of this. Watching the children grow, building the ranch, growing old with you. She smiled. Maybe some grandchildren eventually, though let us not rush that. Sounds perfect to me. He kissed the top of her head. You know what I want? What? To give you everything I promised that day at the crossroads. A home and family. A life where you never feel unwanted or left behind. Where you know every single day that you are loved and valued and cherished. You have already given me all of that and more, Vincent. You gave me a life I did not know was possible. Good. But I am not done yet. I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are. They stood there in the valley, wrapped in each other's arms, and Jessica thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a dusty crossroads where she had been left behind, to this moment of perfect contentment. Vincent had not just helped her that day. He had chosen her, and he had kept choosing her every day since. He had walked her path with her, and together they had built something beautiful. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For stopping, for seeing me, for choosing me. Always, Jessica. Always. The years continued to unfold, bringing new joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. James grew into a fine young man, taking over more of the horse training operation as Vincent began to slow down. He married a sweet girl from Socorro, a teacher named Anna, and they gave Vincent and Jessica their first grandchild, a boy they named Vincent after his grandfather. Rose proved to have a head for business, taking over the financial management of the ranch and proving better with numbers than any of them. She corresponded with buyers across the territory, expanding their market for trained horses. She eventually married a banker from Albuquerque, a man who respected her intelligence and drive. Samuel, the youngest, surprised everyone by deciding to become a doctor. He left Socorro to attend medical school back east, but returned 5 years later to set up a practice, determined to serve the community that had raised him. Vincent and Jessica grew older together, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing down. But their love never wavered. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, weathered droughts and harsh winters, mourned when Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep at 83. They welcomed more grandchildren, then great-grandchildren, their family growing and spreading, but always returning to the ranch for gatherings. On a warm September evening, 35 years after the day they met, Jessica and Vincent sat on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over land they had worked for more than 3 decades. Vincent was 61 now, his hair completely white, his hands gnarled from years of hard work. Jessica was 54, her dark hair streaked with gray, laugh lines deep around her eyes and mouth. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people who had met at a crossroads and chosen to build a life together. Do you remember what you told me that first day? Jessica asked. About helping people because someone giving a damn makes all the difference? I remember. You gave a damn about a scared girl at a crossroads, and you changed everything for her. You gave her a life beyond anything she could have imagined. Vincent took her hand, his thumb tracing the wedding ring he had placed there 34 years ago. That scared girl became the woman I love, the mother of my children, my partner in building this life. I did not change things for you, Jessica. We changed things for each other. Still, I wonder sometimes what would have happened if you had just ridden past that day. I did not, and that is all that matters. I stopped. I helped. I fell in love. and I have been grateful for that choice every day since." Jessica leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him that had not diminished despite the years. "I love you, Vincent Hawthorne. I love you, Jessica Hawthorne, today, tomorrow, and for whatever time we have left." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared behind the mountains and the first stars appeared. Around them, the ranch was quiet, the evening chores done, the animals settled for the night. In the house behind them, 3 generations of family had gathered for the anniversary celebration tomorrow. The land they had bought with hope and determination now supported not just them, but their children and grandchildren. Jessica thought about that girl at the crossroads, alone and abandoned, terrified of what the future held. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that everything would be all right, that a cowboy on a bay horse would stop and offer help, that she would find love and build a family and create a life rich with meaning and connection. That being left behind at the crossroads was not an ending, but a beginning. But perhaps that girl had known somehow. Perhaps that was why she had accepted Vincent's help, why she had taken his hand and let him pull her up onto his horse. Perhaps she had recognized even then that this was the person who would choose her path and walk it with her for the rest of their lives. Vincent stirred beside her. "We should go in. Big day tomorrow, with everyone coming for the party." "Just a few more minutes. I want to remember this moment." "What is special about this moment?" Jessica looked out at the land they had built their life on, at the house that had started as 2 rooms and grown into a sprawling home filled with memories. She thought about the children they had raised, the grandchildren who carried their legacy forward, the community they were part of. And she thought about the man beside her, who had seen her when she was invisible, who had valued her when she felt worthless, who had loved her faithfully for 35 years. This moment is special because it is ours, because we built it together from nothing but determination and love, because I am sitting here with you, after all these years, still grateful that you stopped at that crossroads. Vincent smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "Then let us remember it together." They sat on the porch until the stars filled the sky, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting. The path that had started at a dusty crossroads had led them here, to this place of peace and contentment and deep, abiding love. And when they finally went inside, walking hand in hand through the door of the home they had built together, Jessica knew that this was what happily ever after really meant. Not a perfect life without challenges, but a life built with someone who chose you every single day, someone who saw your path and decided to walk it with you, no matter where it led. That was the gift Vincent had given her all those years ago at the crossroads. Not just a ride into town or help finding work, but a partnership that had lasted a lifetime, a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger, a choice made and honored every single day. And as Jessica drifted off to sleep that night, wrapped in Vincent's arms as she had been for 34 years, her last thought was one of profound gratitude for the family they had built, for the life they had created, and most of all, for the cowboy who had stopped at a crossroads and changed everything. The next morning dawned bright and clear, perfect for the anniversary celebration. Family arrived throughout the morning, filling the house with laughter and noise. James and Anna came with their 4 children, the oldest now 15 and already showing Vincent's talent with horses. Rose arrived from Albuquerque with her husband and 3 daughters, all of them sharp and quick like their mother. Samuel brought his wife and 2 young sons, the boys fascinated by everything about ranch life. Jessica moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and compliments, making sure everyone had enough to eat. Vincent held court on the porch, telling stories to his grandchildren about the old days, about training wild horses and building the ranch from nothing. His eyes sparkled as he talked, and Jessica could see the young man he had been beneath the weathered exterior. After lunch, as the afternoon heat drove everyone to seek shade, James called for attention. "We have something for you," he told his parents, and pulled out a wooden sign, beautifully carved and painted. The sign read, "Hawthorne Ranch, established 1879, built on love and hard work." Vincent's eyes grew bright with unshed tears as James and his brothers mounted the sign at the entrance to their property. "That is perfect, son. Thank you." "It is what you taught us," James said. "That hard work and love are what matter. That family is what you build, not just what you were born into." Jessica wiped her own tears, overwhelmed by the moment. Their children had understood, had taken the lessons of their parents' lives and made them their own. They were passing them down to another generation. The legacy was not just the land or the ranch, but the values and the love. As the sun began to set and families started the journey back to their own homes, Vincent and Jessica stood at the gate, waving goodbye. When the last wagon disappeared down the road, they stood together looking at the new sign, their arms around each other. "We did good," Vincent said quietly. "We did very good." They walked back to the house, tired but content, ready to rest after the busy day. But before they went inside, Vincent stopped and turned to Jessica. "You know what I think about sometimes?" "What?" "How many people walk past opportunities to help, to connect, to make a difference? How many crossroads they pass without stopping? And how lucky I am that I stopped at ours." Jessica reached up and touched his face, her hand gentle against his weathered cheek. "I was the lucky one. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You loved me when I felt unlovable. You were never any of those things. You were always remarkable. I just recognized it. We saved each other that day, Vincent. Both of us were lost in different ways. Both of us needed someone to see us and choose us. We did that for each other." He pulled her close, holding her tight. "Here is to 35 more years of choosing each other." Jessica laughed. "That would make you 96. I think we should just focus on choosing each other every day we have, however many that is." "Deal." They went inside as the stars came out, ready to spend another evening in the home they had built, living the life they had created together. The path that had started at a crossroads all those years ago had led them here, to this place of peace and love and family. And every step of that path they had walked together, choosing each other again and again and again. In the end, that was all that mattered, not where they had started or what they had faced along the way, but that they had faced it together. That when Jessica had been left behind at the crossroads, Vincent had stopped and offered his hand. And that she had taken it, trusting a stranger who became her partner, her love, her home. The cowboy had chosen her path and walked it with her, and together they had built a life more beautiful than either of them had dared to dream. And that, Jessica thought, as she fell asleep in Vincent's arms for the 35,000th time, was the very definition of a happy ending. The seasons continued to turn at Hawthorne Ranch, each one bringing its own rhythm and challenges. Vincent and Jessica grew older, but not slower, still working the ranch alongside their children and grandchildren. They had built something that would last beyond their own lifetimes, a legacy of land and family and love that would continue for generations. And whenever Jessica passed the crossroads outside Socorro, which she did often over the years, she always thought of that September day in 1878 when her life had changed forever, when she had been left behind by people who should have loved her, and found by someone who chose to love her. When her story had ended and begun in the same moment, at the same dusty intersection of paths. She never forgot the fear and desperation of that moment, but she also never forgot the sound of hoofbeats approaching, the kind voice asking if she needed help, the strong hand reaching down to pull her up. Those memories were precious, the foundation upon which everything else was built. And on quiet evenings, when it was just her and Vincent sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Jessica would take his hand and hold it tight, grateful beyond words for the man who had stopped at a crossroads and changed her entire world. The man who had seen her path and chosen to walk it beside her, every step of the way, for the rest of their lives. That was love. That was partnership. That was the happy ending she had never dared to hope for, delivered by a cowboy on a bay horse who had cared enough to stop and help a stranger in need. And it was more than enough. It was everything.